Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. Today's video is going to be my best baits for the month of January. In my opinion, this is the toughest month to fish for largemouth bass or smallmouth bass in the state of Washington. I know it gets a little bit easier as you get down south. You don't have extreme winters like you do in the Northeast, the Midwest, or even the Pacific Northwest, which, all actuality, we really don't have extreme winters like the Northeast does. We have pretty mild winters. But for that matter, I still feel like January is the toughest month to actually catch fish. January is my most liked month out of all 12 months. So I tend to do other stuff, organize tackle, fix issues with the boat, improve my boat overall. I'm constantly doing that all throughout the year. I install new gadgets and equipment on the boat as well this time of the year. I already sent off my reels to Bass Pro Shop to get professionally cleaned, and the ones that need to be fixed will get fixed, and I should be getting those back here by the second or third week in February, as I'll kick off my season right about that time frame. But back to January, the weather is different here, so we tend to have mild weather most of the time. But the fish are still definitely in a winter phase. They will not chase a bait down for the most part. So you have to be methodical with your bait presentation and your time on water. You have to be effective. I highly recommend picking out your days to go fishing right around a full moon or a moon phase in the month of January. It'll increase your odds of actually getting bit. This time of the year, fishing in the Pacific Northwest, I tend to catch more trout than bass, but that's okay because that's still getting your rod bent. A lot more than I can say for a lot of people that sit on the couch and don't even go out and venture out into the weather and get on water this time of the year. Around the country, you can definitely catch the biggest fish of your lifetime this time of the year. The bigger fish, they have to feed more than the little fish. But let's just go ahead and jump right into my baits. I don't have a certain amount of baits. I'm really looking at about 4 baits right here that I have for the month of January for me that I actually catch fish with and have caught fish with, no matter where I was at in the country. So let's go ahead and dive into it. The first bait is going to be a jerk bait. I kind of a budget bass angler, so I really don't like to spend money on the Megabass Vision 110, plus 1, plus 2, whatever all those models are. Other than that, it's a freaking $25 jerk bait. If you were to go with Strike King like I do, these are, this is a KVD 200. It's got 2 hooks. It's in the IU color. Here's a 300. The price of this jerk bait is, $5 to $8, depending on where you get it and when you get it. But literally I can get, 3 to 4 of these baits for the price of one of those Megabass Vision 110. Don't get me wrong, the Megabass Vision 110 probably the best jerkbait on the market, but being a budget bass angler, Strike King, in my opinion, is the next best. It's straight, flat out gets bit. The KVD 300, KVD 200, you can't go wrong with it. All your normal colors, depending on your water clarity, is really going to dictate the type of colors that you're going to throw and your sky conditions are going to have a major picking on the color selection that you utilize. This time of the year, I like to throw jerk baits on a spinning rod. I like to utilize either 8-pound fluorocarbon or 6-pound mono, or even 6-pound fluorocarbon or 8-pound mono. It just is up to you. I go with Stren and Seagar Red Label. It's fairly cheap and affordable. That's with the spinning rod jerk baits. Now, if I'm gonna fish it on a bait caster, I'm gonna go with probably 10 to 12-pound fluorocarbon, depending on the amount of cover. I fish Lake X all the time, so I tend to go with 12-pound fluorocarbon just because it has an extreme amount of wood in that lake. But really, the 8-pound fluorocarbon with the KVD 300, Strike King KVD 300 series jerkbait. Straight out of the package, it has stock hooks, split rings. They're all good to go. You don't have to change anything. Other than that, I can't say enough about this jerkbait. It's caught me some really nice fish at some really tough times. Another part of the jerkbait that I like to utilize is a product made by Storm. If you follow my channel, I've highlighted this product before. It is a old school product. It is a product known as a Suspend Dot. Now, these are lead stickers that you can peel off and you can position onto your jerkbait to give it a slow suspending action. Whether your bait normally has a slow rise to it or even just a slow fall. I know that when you utilize and change the hooks and split rings on your jerkbait, it can really change the overall fall rate of your bait. So you can utilize that in certain situations, whether you're fishing out in open water, deeper water, and you got to count your bait down. That's a very good idea to use. Have 3 or 4 jerkbaits on 3 or 4 different spinning rods, all for different situations. You can hammer on some fish if you utilize those tactics. I can't say enough about a jerkbait. It's probably my #1 bait this time for this month. Like I said, I tend to take a lot of this month off as I'm prepping for this upcoming season. Other than that, I have a few things to install on the boat. I have definitely a lot of tackle organization to do. I'd like to take everything out of the boat and clean it all up, fix whatever I need to fix, and then put all the gear back in there. So I'll be going through a lot of my tackle and a lot of my gear here shortly. But that's jerkbait. Once again, the Strike King KVD 300 is my bait choice of the month. It's what I have the most confidence in. The second bait in line is going to be a blade bait or a tailspin. A blade bait, as in my favorite blade bait, is a Hedon or a Hedon sonar. I think it's the 433. This is the 1/2 ounce model. It is just a flat out killer bait. It's just a chunk of metal, really, that's painted with a set of hooks on it. It does have 3 holes and it has a little clip system. Now, the front hole is for shallow water. For mid depth, I recommend putting it in the middle, and then for super deep water, put it on the very back. Now, that's going to dictate the amount of vibration that it's going to give the bait. I catch a lot of trout, a lot of fish with this bait. You can cover extreme amount of water with this bait. Very fast and effective with a spinning rod. I fished this on a spinning rod exclusive. It's probably going to be the 8-pound fluorocarbon is my choice for line with this bait. I will cast this bait out, let it sink all the way to the bottom, and I will yo-yo this bait back to the boat from there. Not real aggressive jerks or hops or yo-yos or anything like that. Just slow and controlled. The other retrieve that I like to utilize is basically what I call the feather, where I feather this bait on the bottom of the lake. Basically just kind of drag it, hover it right above the bottom of the contour of the lake. Could be highly effective, especially if you're not having a lot of snag type stuff. If it's just got gravel bottom on those super clear water lakes, you can feather this bait out in deep water. I feel like the 1/2 ounce bait is pretty effective all the way down to about 60 feet of water. I've caught trout, I've caught salmon, I've caught bass, I've caught bluegill, I've caught yellow perch. This is the yellow perch color. I've caught a lot of different species of fish on this bait right here. My other style bait that's still a blade bait is the Johnson Thin Fisher. If you look at this bait and compare it to this other sonar bait, you can see there's little subtle differences. I have more confidence in the Hedon than I do with the Thin Fisher, but either or will get bit. There's so many different bait companies out on the market nowadays that make these just chunks of metal that have hooks on them. But I tell you what, these flat out get bit on in the winter time, in the colder months. The old school way, back in the 70s and 80s, were these tailspins. These are known as Little George tailspins. Some of these I've had for 20 years. Well, all 3 of these I've had for over 20 years. I picked them up in East Texas. But these, you could drop on fish. Has a little line tie right here. On the top of it has a little blade for a tail spin. And these things do some damage as well, especially if you have gin clear water. Even if you don't, if you have slightly stained water, they will flat out get bit. Now, my other alternative, because normally this bait costs about $5-6 in the store, if you can find them. They're pretty tough to find, so more than likely I would recommend just making an order. At the Tackle Warehouse sale, they had these baits on clearance or sale. So I highly recommend going there and picking them up. This right here is a generic version of the blade bait. Yes, this is a Temu version of a blade bait, which the action isn't that bad. I've seen baits have worse action than this. I'm just going to hold it up and compare it to this Hedon. You see them. But yes, this Temu bait isn't bad. It will flat out catch a fish. So that is the blade bait, and I fish it on 6 to 8 pound fluorocarbon. More than likely I would utilize the fluorocarbon just because it has a little bit less stretch. But you can utilize the monofilament as well. That's going to be on a 7-foot medium action rod, 6 to 8 pound line, blade bait. You can cover a lot of water with it. So that's the blade baits. I would definitely try different retrieves. The next bait is going to be a jig. I tend to fish a jig, not as much as I used to, but I still tend to fish a jig. I have a couple of different models that I like to utilize. One of the first ones is going to be a 6 cents hybrid jig. I have a couple of jig trailers that I like to utilize. This one is a 1/2 ounce model. Same with this other one with the little tail of a worm, shaky head worm that I snipped off, and then I put dipped in the tail, and it just gives a do-nothing jig. It just sits on the bottom. Real subtle action right there. It could mean the difference of getting bit and not getting bit. This more or less would be for the summertime or fall time. You can still get bit in the wintertime throwing, a big trailer, a big jig. This is once again the 6 cents hybrid jig. Its head is basically a hybrid jig between a swim jig and a normal jig. The other type of jig that I like to fish is a football jig. This is a Bass Patrol. I'm pretty sure it's a tungsten football head. I have a Zoom chunk, super chunk on there, green pumpkin. I've dyed the tail orange. Has a super small hook on it, but it is a sticky hook. Has a rubber skirt on it, which is really, really important in the colder months, as this is the coldest month on out of the year here in the Pacific Northwest. So the rubber jig is basically like, it looks like it's living inside the colder water. It undulates and just has way different movement than what your natural or what your silicone skirts are going to do compared to rubber. The other choice for one of the jigs, it's a bigger profile, is a mop jig. I go with the 5/8. This is a Davy Height Buckeye Lures mop jig, 5/8. Has a rattle on it, has a nice premium hook on it, has a big skirt on it, so you can modify the skirt for your time of the season. I tend to go with the full skirt. I don't even cut nothing off of it. It gives it a bigger profile. But this, you can fish down in 20 feet of water. I tend to throw a little bit smaller stuff in the wintertime. The other thing is I try not to go too big with the trailers on my jigs. So this do-nothing trailer would be perfect. The other alternative to that would be like Tactical Bassin talks about from time to time in the wintertime, is using a twin tail. This is a Zoom Fat Albert twin tail black. I think it's in the 4-inch. Just the soft plastic trailers do nothing. The twin tails do nothing compared to, these. But even then, what I'm trying to say is that you don't want to utilize a rage tail on your winter jigs for the most part, like you do in the spring, summer, and fall. You want to have the most subtle things as possible this time of the year. You'll get far more action, far more bites overall. So that is the deal. Once again, this is the Fat Albert 4-inch. Comes in a 10-pack made by Zoom. They're really useful. Once again, you can never go wrong with utilizing, Zoom salty chunks. You can even utilize some, this is a really old bait, but you can utilize some of these, craw type smaller baits. This is like a 3-inch craw, red and black. I would probably bite it down and then thread it on there and, go about that. Once again, if I was to fish those jigs, I would fish it on a 7-foot medium to medium heavy with 15 to 17 pound fluorocarbon. Maybe 50 pound braid would be as much as the highest I would go in the braid. But with it being wintertime, you want to work that jig very slow. You want to not hop it real aggressive. You'll want to kind of experiment with your retrieves with the jig, is dragging it and just letting it sit there. As far as colors, I tend to go with the black and blue and the browns and purples, which is known as the peanut butter color. Really, I utilize the 1/2 ounce to 3/4 ounce jig size. I tend to get bit way more in those two sizes this time of the year if I am going to be dragging a jig on the bottom. Most of the time I like to throw moving baits, and baits that are a little bit faster retrieve But once again, sometimes you got to slow down and you got to start dragging stuff just to find fish and get bit. So that is the jig part of my baits for January. Next bait is going to be swim baits. I can't say enough about swim baits. I'm still learning quite a bit with swim baits. You can never go wrong with the open jig head on a bait. Let's go ahead and rig one of these up. This is the 4.8 speed shad made by Bass Pro Shop. It's the tournament series. They're maybe $5-6 a pack. I think the color of this is smallmouth. No, green pumpkin. Smallmouth Magic is another one of my favorite colors. This is a 1/2 ounce. I think it's a 4/0 hook. Let's go ahead and rig this up for everyone. Now we're gonna go ahead and bite this off just so the head sits a little bit more flush to the back of this. As you can see, it has some barbs on it. Maybe I can get the camera to show you guys that. Yes, the barbs right here. There's 2 separate little barbs on it. I can barely get the camera to focus in on that. Anyway, we're gonna bite off this first little 1/2 inch of bait. Does not taste good. Let's go ahead and measure this up. Scratch it. Let's go ahead and rig this up. This is the most important part, is to rig this straight up. It may take you a few times. Don't feel bad if it takes you a few times to rig this up. Yeah, looks like I'm gonna have to take a couple times myself. Let's go ahead and do that a little bit better. Yeah. Any kind of little kink in the body will not allow that bait to swim straight back and track straight back to you. It's going to have a little kink in it. Looks like it has a slight kink in it, but it's all right. But anyway, you could definitely throw this on fluorocarbon. This will get bit in all 50 states, whether it's a bass or a trout or catfish or whatever it may be. You can cover a tremendous amount of water. You can fish this at different depths, different speeds. You name it, you can do it with it. This is just an old school standby in the winter time. The other variations of swim baits and hooks that you can utilize is like these little, let's say these little underspins. This is a Cool Baits underspin. I learned about this bait from Tactical Bassin. This one has a little bit of rust. It's been used. I utilized the 2.8 inch swim bait on there. I have the 3 inch. This is in Smallmouth Magic. This is been weathered package a little bit. Let's take one of these out. Now this is flat out get bit. This little setup, and you can fish it on 8-pound mono on a spinning rod and reel. Let's go ahead and about halfway, scratch it. Let's go in. This is the hardest part, is to get the thing straight. Just take your time. Don't feel bad if you got to do it multiple times. Take it out and reset it. It is what it is. The more you do it, the better off you will be at doing it in the future. The more you do it, the better you get at it. There you go. Has a slight kink in it. Just for instructional purposes only. That is a deadly bait right there. That will get bit in all 50 states. I guarantee it. I'd fish it on 6-pound to 8-pound fluorocarbon on a spinning rod and reel. Once again, can't get Can't go wrong with that underspin type of a swim bait presentation. They make those in all different sizes. I like the smaller ones, the smallest one. My other option for a swim bait is in the wintertime, in the month of January, is a larger underspin. This is my modified underspin, like Magnum underspin, with a flashy swimmer hook that I've modified all this stuff. I've taken a little bar that comes off of it and put some split rings and a little piece of a spinner bait to get the nice swivel action of the blade spinning. If you hadn't seen that video, I highly recommend checking out my channel and checking out the videos to find that modification video and learning on how to modify that hook for the 7.8 Kitech, which was one of the first bigger swim baits that actually started to fish. We're going to go ahead and just rig this one up for you guys. It is a fairly easy bait to rig up. I fish it on a 7-foot 10-inch rod. I fish a lot of heavy cover, so I tend to fish it on straight braid. I do not lose too many fish with it. I do get bit quite a bit with it. I fish 80-pound braid with it. A lot of people say that's a really heavy line. Well, it doubles as my giant topwater bait, rod, and reel. So I can actually have this bait rigged up and fish it with 80-pound braid on a 7-foot 10 rod. Johnny Moore Signature Series reel, and this thing will flat out catch some fish. This is a coloration of electric shad in the Kitech 7.8 fat swing impact fat Kitech right here. Electric shad, one of my favorite colors. Gets bit. Anyway, moving on. So that's like a weedless style swim bait. Then you got your open hook swim bait. Your other swim baits would be a 8 to 10 inch mag draft, Mega Bass mag draft. You cannot go wrong with that. These other baits right here are the Mega Bass Dark Sleeper in a 1/2 ounce and 3/4 ounce in a bluegill color, which these are to be crawled on the bottom. They're weedless, but they do have a hook in there. They will catch fish, so they are bottom-oriented baits. And this time of the year, that's what you want, because this is the coldest month of the year. Therefore, the fish are going to be naturally lethargic and not really fast-paced and just crushing and killing stuff at all. They will, but they're not like they do in the warmer months. So my other bait choices is going to be like a glide bait. This is the Bass Pro Shop XPS Swerve glide bait. This is the bluegill color. In the past, casting these, I've had a problem with some of the tails flopping off. So I tend to slide that out and drop a super glue in there and then slide that tail back on. Seems to do the job. They do come with spare tails on most of the models of them, but some of the models do not come with the spare tails. Just beware of that. But for that being a $20 bait, that is something special. Once again, these are my 4 choices for the best baits for the month of January, which in my opinion is the toughest month here in the Pacific Northwest to fish. So once again, I wish everybody the best of luck and happy hunting for the big fish. And check back with me here shortly. I'll have some more content for you guys coming down the pipeline. Thank you for watching. Swimbait 79 out.